Hello, Facebook fans and YouTube fans of DX Engineering. It's the weekend special. It's Friday afternoon here in the Eastern Time Zone. I'm Tim, K3LR, and we have a very special guest today. It's Jim, WA3FET. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Tim, and hi, everybody out there
and
in radio land.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about having Jim on. Of course, Jim has been a mentor of mine, and way back in the punch card days when he was just starting to do antenna modeling when you were up at Case, and I can remember visiting you up at Case Western. What years were those, Jim?
Well, actually, I started antenna modeling back in '73 at Penn State with the first remnants of the antenna code. It was actually not called NEC, it was called AMP for Antenna Modeling Program. And then in 1979, I went to Case. So it would have been 79 to 83 that we did the punch card stuff. And of course, at Penn State, it was all punch cards too. In fact, you had boxes of cards, and you had to put all these cards in. And in those days, I got like the normal student would get what's called 64 kilobytes. Okay. I mean, when you think about it, 64 kilobytes. And we got special permission at Penn State to go up to 128 kilobytes. And you had to go overnight. Yeah, I had to stay up all night to go to the computer center. And then one time we even got 256. And I said, wow, is this a lot of memory?
Well, that's great stuff. Now, so when you finished your PhD, where did you go to work?
Okay. Well, all that antenna modeling work started at a little company in San Francisco, but then all the guys went to a national lab called Lawrence Livermore National Lab. And Lawrence Livermore was a sister lab to Los Alamos. Los Alamos, probably most people remember, was where the Manhattan Project was mainly done with Oppenheimer and so forth. And that was for the atomic bomb that basically won World War II. During the 50s, Lawrence Livermore started. It was Ernest Lawrence. And then Edward Teller was the main guy. And he came up with the hydrogen bomb, the super bomb. And anyway, Livermore is how that, all that stuff. But anyway, the antenna modeling, all the guys from that little company went to Livermore, and they started working on AMP and then eventually NEC. And I heard about it, of course, at Penn State. And that was my dream, to go to Livermore, because they had the most fantastic computers in the world. They were called Cray computers. They had about 20 of them. And so that was just my dream, you know. And so I was communicating with them while I was a student. And they said, you don't even need the interview here. You got the job right away. So I didn't even interview. The story is, I did my what's called a defense. That's where you have to defend your thesis. And so I did the defense on a Friday afternoon, and that for a PhD. And then I stayed up all night celebrating that. And then the taxi came at 5 in the morning. I went out to the airport at Cleveland and flew to San Francisco, and I started work on Monday at Lawrence Livermore Lab. And I was the most excited person in the world to be with all those guys that made NEC. And then I worked on the team that made NEC 4, and it was great, you know.
What a great story. And so let's, there's some guys in here, 2 Echo 0 Radio Echo from the UK. And Jerry, Whiskey Bravo 9 Zulu is in here.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Jerry.
Good to see you, Jerry. And India Tango 9, India Delta Golf, Giuseppe. And Michael Coulter's in here, W8CI. Mike, it was great to hear you on with your new antennas. And our friend Mike 0 Kilo Papa Delta Stroke Mobile is in here. And Papa Echo 2 Kilo from the Netherlands. And let's see, Kilo Golf 5 Uniform Mike India. He got his 7300 from DX Engineering. It just got it in. So he's all set to go for field day.
Most fun radio.
Here's Angel. And
my brother.
Your twin brother there. And,
yeah.
Whiskey Papa 3 radio. And let's see, Kilo 2 Papa Juliet Charlie, Whiskey Zero Delta Tango Mike, and Richard, K0 X-Ray Golf. And you and I both have a lot of Richard stuff.
Yeah, we sure do.
Whiskey Alpha 8 Yankee and Whiskey 3 Bravo Mike Kilo, Carl from Butler, PA. Jim, you know what I remember when you were coming out and doing the antenna forum back when you were working at Livermore, and you would bring like 25 copies of the latest mini neck, you know, on the 5 1/4 inch discs. And at the end of your talk, you would say, well, I have a few copies of it. And it was like you were a rock star, like Bruce Springsteen. They would just run up to the stage, and it was just craziness back then. Everybody was so hungry for the latest mini neck. And of course, that was before the internet. And those were great times. I mean, you know, we take it for granted now. What you can do on your home computer is amazing.
Right. That's right. Those were wonderful times. And I believe I gave talks there some like 15 years or something, and all kinds of subjects. And you're right. I would bring that software, and it was just like a mass stampede, you know. And then I was sending stuff out for months after, you know, to everybody.
Yeah. Well, you couldn't bring enough because, you know, you would pack the house, Jim. I remember people squeezing in, you know, lining up on both sides of the walls at Hara Arena. It was really something. Now, Jim, so here, let's fast forward a little bit into the 90s, and how you're the guy that came up with the concept for the optimized wideband array, the OWA. Very, very popular design. This whole place here, almost 50 Yagis is OWAs. Tell me, Jim, how did that occur to you, of how to modify a Yagi in that form and bring that first director close?
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. Okay. And I'll try to keep it short, because everybody knows that I can go on for hours here, and I don't think we have that. But anyway, what happened is we were contacted by a company in the 90s that was called Qualcomm. They weren't known very much in those days, okay, but I think everybody's heard of them now. And you may remember the old cell phones. You had the cell phone like this, and then you had a little whip that you would pull out, okay, or some of them just had the whip sticking up. And it was really cool to have a whip on there. In fact, they even made like fake whips you could glue onto your phone and make it look cool that you have this whip sticking out of the thing. The thing is, they wanted to go to dual bands, okay, and maybe even other frequencies. And so they said, could you come up and design some kind of antenna other than that whip that could go over a wider band? And so I was really into the computer optimization, and one of the first ones with Brian Beasley to do that kind of stuff, K6STI. And so I put it in there, and I added some extra wires, and I let the computer try to find it. I just guided it along, and it found out that you put these extra wires real close to the main wire. And of course, that concept of the open sleeve was well known, but nobody had ever applied computer modeling to get it to be really wideband and flat. So anyway, I did that, and so we went to Qualcomm, and they said, "Wow, this is great," and we were going to get a patent and everything. And then Sony was the one selling the phones, and they said, "Oh no, we can't have that where you pull this up and these other things come up, you know." And we said, well, that would be cool too. You know, you'd see these little things coming up, and no, that wasn't cool enough for Sony. So that didn't work. So I said, well, let me see, could I make this on a Yagi? And so we tried it, and I lit all the elements. I put everything in, all the positions, all the lengths for like a 3-element Yagi, a 4-element, and so forth. And it found that magic spot where you put that director real close. And depending on where you put it, you could get extremely wide bandwidth. And you were the first one that I made an OWA Yagi. That was the first 40 meter, which I think you're still using basically the same design. And I've used it. Jerry and others are using it. The other one I built right after that, or designed right after, and was for a ham that many will know on here, Bill Fisher, W4AN. It was for 15 meters. And I made it so that that first director was extremely close, like maybe 6 inches away. And it covered a tremendous amount of bandwidth. He called me, he put it up, he built 2 of them and stacked them. And he called me up on the phone. He said, Jim, I can't believe this thing. It's going way up above the band, you know. So, and the rest is history. We had Nathan Miller, one of my students here, and he learned how to model as well. And I taught him all about the OWA, and he helped me design a lot of the antennas that we eventually built at our contest station, K3CR, and down in Puerto Rico using Angels called WP3R. And so that OWA concept, now it's like all over the internet and all over the world. The LB Civic, he devoted his life to it, you know. It's amazing how that comes up.
That's great, Jim. And so we want to say hi to KN6 Bravo Zulu Golf and Steve, November 8 Tango Uniform Whiskey. And here's our good friend Ray, N9JA from America. And Ray was on with us on Tuesday. And Hotel Bravo 9 Fox Papa Sugar and Kilo 4 Victor Tango Echo just bought a 7100 from DX Engineering today. Yeah, so I guess you'll get that very soon, Dallas. But hopefully, I don't know that it's going to make it there for field day. Let's see, Hector from Puerto Rico, and Carl's looking to buy a Yaesu FT101D. Okay, and Stan, November Alpha 2 Golf, and let's see, from Ireland, Echo India 2 Julia Delta. He says 2 legends. Oh, must be you, Jim, and me, I guess.
I don't know.
We got Kilo Papa 4 Papa Radio, and then we got Whiskey 4 Papa Golf and Whiskey 3 Alpha Tango Victor. And Travis, he's excited for his first field day tomorrow.
Wow.
Man, that's got to be just so cool. And Papa Yankee 3 Victor Kilo and November 5 Germany Juliet Quebec. And I've got my new power supply from DX Engineering. That's Jerry, K1 Sugar Oscar. So Jerry, good to have you on board. And so Jim, let's talk for a second about your professional life. How long have you been teaching at Penn State University?
Okay. Well, as I said, I started at Lawrence Livermore Labs, 1983, and I went to about 5 years there, and then I spent 2 years at what's called the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, as a professor. I was a project engineer at Livermore. At Livermore, I worked on, well, of course, NEC. That was my main thing. And I also worked on something called EMP, which is electromagnetic pulse, and high power microwaves. And I redesigned a lot of how they measured things in time domain and stuff out there. And then I came after California, Monterey, at the Naval Postgraduate School, working a lot of antennas there, using the club station, K3LR there. I then came to Penn State in 1989. So this year, and it was the summer of '89. So this year, it's 31 years at Penn State. So, and I am my blood is actually bleeding blue and white here. So with the shirt, of course,
That's right.
I have about 100 of these shirts, by the way. So.
Well, you can't have too many Penn State shirts, and this wasn't a DX Engineering show. I would have one of my Penn State shows.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Tim's a Penn State graduate as well, as we all know.
Yeah, we've got a lot of hams that have graduated from Penn State, N7TR and N3RA and K3UA and W3YQ, and we could go on and on and on.
WA3LRO and A3B too. You remember him?
Yes. So we got, let's see, we got Delta Lima 6 Radio Delta Echo from Bavaria and W9 Sugar Tango Sugar. And let's see, True Story Chip says, Seymour Cray taught my oldest daughter how to shoot spit wads. Boy, that's trivia for you. And let's see, we got 8 Papa 6 November Whiskey. I think he's checked in.
I think so, yeah.
On 40 meters at night. And let's see, we got Roger, November Kilo 1, India. Hi, Tim and Jim. Jim, can you tell us what computers and programming languages you were working with while doing the NEC work?
Oh, sure. Well, it depends where I was at Penn State. It was an IBM 370, 360 series on Fortran. Some of you may have heard of it. And then at Case Western, it was the VAX computer, the DEC, which was Digital Equipment Corporation. A great computer, absolutely fantastic for its day. The VAX 11780. And then at Livermore, we had a huge VAX system there. And so that was some of the computers, as well as what was called Control Data Corporation, CDC 7600s, very, very powerful mainframes. And of course, we had about 20 Crays as well. And the best Cray I ever saw, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Crays, look them up sometime. They're just these round vertical columns, and it's all clear, and you see all the wiring and everything in there. And this particular Cray, which was nicknamed Bubbles, had this liquid cooling in. There were bubbles floating up all the time in it. And those things cost about 60 million a piece, okay? And probably my phone here has more memory than what those Crays had in the 1980s. And it was all Fortran. Everything was Fortran that we did NEC on in those days.
So, Jim, I'm going to skip down to your life down at Arecibo. You've done quite a bit of work down at the observatory, and of course, worked with Angel and Joe Taylor and other folks down there. But tell us, you have some antennas that are part of the actual dish down there that you designed and oversaw the construction of. Just pick your favorite one.
Oh, okay. Well, the favorite one has to be the current HF array that is at the bottom of the dish. What happened is there was another array that I also worked on at Penn State as a student, and also down there before. There was a big array out near the ocean. It had 32 huge log periodic antennas. So you could just imagine that antenna system. But a hurricane came in 1998, and Hurricane Georges, and it destroyed that array. And the observatory decided they don't want to, find another piece of land or build some on that same piece of land for certain reasons. Can we do it all back at the dish, the 1,000-foot dish? And of course, Arecibo has a 1,000-foot dish that's in a valley there. A lot of people probably familiar with it. So we started looking into that, and the first idea we came up with was to hang a Yagi. And of course, you and I had worked on something in the 90s called the Bencher Skyhawk, which is now the DX Engineering Skyhawk, that had, one driven element and multiple other elements nearby and other elements, no traps, and one feed line. And so I came up with a design of a similar Yagi that would handle 2 frequencies that Arecibo wanted, and it would have to take 1 megawatt of power. Okay, and it would be raised up to the dish on the 3 towers on pulleys. Well, it turns out that we did design it. It had these huge corona balls at the end that were 3 feet diameter to take that kind of power, and then they decided it would just be too much of a mechanical nightmare. Could you come up with a different idea? So we got a whole new contract to think up something new. And we thought up of an array of cross dipoles in a triangular array down at the bottom of the dish. And then they would feed what's a subreflector that would be about 300 feet diameter that would be up above the dish, a couple hundred feet, several hundred feet. Now, the trick was is all the other antennas that Arecibo uses for radio astronomy and radar. That's all up in the UHF range and microwaves. And so we had to make sure this mesh that we hung up there would not interfere with that work. So we built something called a frequency selective surface that would allow the HF to be reflected almost perfectly, but it would let the UHF and microwaves go right through. So it would be invisible to UHF and microwaves. And so that's what we built. And it has each dipole. There's 6 dipoles for one frequency and 6 dipoles for another frequency. Each dipole takes 100 kilowatts of power. So there's 600 total. And with the 1,000-foot dish and this system, which is called a Cassegrain reflecting system, it's amazing. And now they can take this subreflector, and with the winches, they can move it up and down to get it to be perfectly focused at each frequency. And I always had my fingers crossed that, wow, is this thing really going to work? Because, you know, there's 3 types of people at Arecibo that do science. There's the astronomers, and they're probably consider themselves the most important, okay, the astronomers. And then there's the radar astronomers that bounce signals off of asteroids and planets. And then there's the ionospheric scientists that study the atmosphere, the ionosphere with radar. And so I always worried, because they're looking at such weak signals for the astronomers, is this big mesh up there, 300 feet in diameter, is that going to affect the dish, okay? And to this day, and we could get Angel to tell us, there's not been one astronomer that's ever complained that they've had any kind of limitations of what they've been observing. So it worked perfectly, okay? And I felt really relaxed after that, and went to the beach and had a bottle of rum after that.
Boy, that's great, Jim. Let's see, we have a couple others here. We got Chris, W8 Charlie Oscar Papa, and Travis, W3 Tango Mike Bravo. He says, good afternoon, Tim and Jim. I'm sure you don't remember, but we met at Dayton. My friend Kilo Echo 3 Hotel Lima, Ed, introduced us.
Oh, yes, I do remember. Yep, Ed, that's Ed Almacy. Yep, I do remember. He was a student of mine. He was a master's degree student. Yep.
Oh, that's great. And so here's Tim, Waterloo Fortran.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And we have a question. Hi, Jim. I'm using 4NEC 2 and EasyNEC with the NEC 4 core. Can you tell us what software you use at Penn State and what software you're using to design your OWA antennas from Yankee 3 Victor Kilo in Brazil?
Okay, certainly there. Be glad to tell you that. Fabiano, okay. Anyway, well, I had a contract some years ago to take the original NEC 4 and also NEC 2, and it was for the Navy, and I had my students put something together, and some of them started a company called Nittany Scientific, because Penn State is in what's called the Nittany Valley, and you probably heard of the Nittany Lions, okay, the Penn State Nittany Lions. So anyway, they created a company called Nittany Scientific, and they made something called NEC-Win Basic and GNEC. And GNEC is basically a graphical user interface that goes around NEC 4. And so they sold it for a while, and I guess there were a lot of people. LB Seebeek wrote some tutorials on how to use these things. And so I still use GNEC sometimes to do things because it still runs very fast, and it's really neat to use. It's probably not available anymore, and there are licensing issues. You know, you have to have a license for NEC 4. That's another story. But anyway, I also, since I had a lot to do with NEC, and I'm a good friend of Roy Llewellyn, he gives me every year a courtesy copy, since we've helped him a lot with things in his code, of his latest version of EasyNEC Pro, with the NEC 4 engine in it. And so I have that as well. I also have something by AC6LA called Auto Easy that goes together with the EasyNEC. That's a very nice program. And that's Dan McGuire made that. I also have, I don't use them a lot, but I have all these other programs for NEC2 and what is it, MMANA and all those ones. But the code that we use a lot these days is more a professional commercial package that's called FICO. And FICO has everything that NEC can do, but it also can model surfaces. And so that's how we did the design of analyzing with the 1,000-foot dish and so forth. And so you can actually build a model of a car or an airplane and have surfaces in their plates or whatever you want. And you can also put dielectrics in as well. And so you could have dielectric material and things like that. And so it's a very expensive. It has many, many different techniques in it, not just what's used in NEC, all kinds of diffraction and other things. And it has a tremendous suite of optimizers. So I usually will design something a lot of times in GNEC, and my students created something called NECOP, which is an optimization package that goes with NEC. And so I'll use that, and then I'll do FICO or vice versa. Maybe I'll do something in FICO and go back and forth. So I usually like the model with both. Sometimes there's a slight frequency shift, but usually my antennas are so wideband that the frequency shift is insignificant, so I don't worry about it. But there still are little things, and of course, none of this antenna modeling is still like you just put it in and hit a button and it pops out. You still got to have a lot of knowledge to make things work properly and know that they're working properly and how to do a lot of testing and things like that. So those are the main code. We at Penn State have all kind of other software packages too. HFSS is one. These are all commercial, very expensive packages, but we get them for free at Penn State, so it's not an issue.
Now that's very good, Jim. We have let's see. Here's Kilo Juliet 3 Lima Radio, Lou, and our friend Otis, November Papa 4 Golf.
Yep.
And Andres from Alaska, Kilo Lima 4 Sugar X-Ray. And then Angel responded here. He said, "Hi, Jim, to keep the astronomers happy, we move that subreflector out of the way when they're not using the HF." So,
okay.
And Michael, Kilo Bravo 1 Charlie Kilo Fox, he's getting ready for field day. And we got Kilo Papa 4 Radio Yankee. And John, Kilo Bravo 3 Hotel. And Lima Zulu 1 Juliet Yankee is on here. Nick, and he asked a question. Jim, if you can compare your scientific involvement versus ham radio, what part is the second of your life?
Oh boy, I think they're almost the same thing for me. I really, yeah, it's all the same. You know, I started out with antennas and thinking about them at like 5th grade, and and it's been the same thing all the way through. So I would say one is over the other. They just complement each other, the science and the ham radio. And I have to say that I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for ham radio. I owe everything to ham radio.
Yep, and I'm in that same camp. Well, Jim, it's been great. We're going to have you on again because we're just getting started. There were so many other things on my list, but we'll have you on again. And I hope you get on the air a little bit for field day, checking out your new 20-meter Yagi, and of course. You do so many good things for the university, and I'm so very proud that you're still there and enjoying it, and you're extremely passionate about what you do, both on the air and with Penn State. So, Jim, any last comments before we QRT?
Well, thank you so much, Tim. It's a real honor to be on with you. You and I have worked so many projects together. We could go on for hours about all the things we've done together. And I'm really happy that you have this venue to get out to the rest of the world. And it's just amazing, all the call signs and all over the world that people are watching. So it's really been my big pleasure. And as you know, I'll be happy anytime to come back and answer questions and talk about history, which I guess ham radio, I've been in it 55 years now. So a lot of history.
Very good, Jim. Well, have a great weekend. I'll see you tonight on 40 and 73 from DX Engineering.
73, everybody.